else who's done this, and it was out of frustration and necessity that I came up with this thing. And I know that this is not from me, because I tapped into the resource, and the infinite resource that's out there. And God says in Jeremiah 33:3, and I'm quoting from the Message, call on me, and I will show you wondrous and marvelous things that you could never figure out on your own. I was in a business meeting recently, and the girl sitting beside me was saying that, there's this management consultant that I want to hire. She said, because she is the only one in my industry who's done what I want to do. And because we were 4 or 5 people in the room, somebody said, look, you don't have to use that person, okay? If you go to God, and he was quoting this verse, same word. God, if you ask God, God will show you things. And I did, okay? In my frustration, I turned to the Lord and I said, help me here. And things began to unfold. Okay? It became clearer and clearer, the pieces started falling. And now we're into investment. So in this GPS process, there are 20 core financial insights. 5 of them have to do investments. 5 had to do with insurance, which is why we initially plowed through the first 5 sessions on insurance, not to be underestimated. We don't want to gloss over them. Took each session to do 5. And now we're going to do 5 sessions on investment. So if you look at 20 sessions, half of them have to do with insurance and investments. Okay? But because they're that important. So let's talk about investment. This first session, we're just going to clarify some terminology and some concepts. Okay? Concepts, what I call building blocks that you're going to need. Because I'll explain to you why. Because I don't understand. If you cannot swim, you shouldn't be jumping into waters that are out of your depth. You're going to drown, and it's a given you're going to drown. Okay? Because you can't swim, and you're way out of your depth, right? And yet people do that all the time. Okay? Throw money to the wind. We don't want to be doing that, so we're going to give you tools to equip you so that you'll be in a better position to do it. So what we're going to do is going to talk about investments. What in the context of what, why, when, how much, where, in the context of the GPS process. Okay? I'm going to tie it into the GPS process. All right. So let's talk first of all some basic terms. Capital, because I'm going to use these words, and I want you to know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure most of you know it, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. When I say capital, I'm talking about the money that we put in, right? The money that we invest in. Okay? When I talk about risk, there's many kinds of risk, but all I'm talking about here is money that I invest. Risk is risk of losing that money. Okay? Forget about risk. We'll talk about that. But first things first. Okay? This money that I have, after I've taken care of my needs, after I've paid my taxes, taken care of my needs, this is all I have left. So it's very precious to me. You follow? If I'm going to invest it, first question I want to ask is, can I lose this? And many people don't ask that question. Okay? Which is why they find themselves in these situations. Okay? Risk means risk of losing just your money. Okay? Don't complicate this at all. Right? The third is returns. Okay? The word I'm going to use is return. Return of what? Return on that money. If I'm going to invest that money, I'm holding on to my money here. If I'm going to invest it in anything, we're going to talk about where in a second. Okay? Question I'm going to ask is, what are you giving me for my money? That's the return. Okay? Also called the ROI, return on investment. Okay? So this basic terminology, become familiar with it. Okay? Capital means your money. The risk of what? Risk of losing that money. Okay? There's many risks, that make you lose that money. And then returns is what you are going to get on that. If you're going to, and you need to invest money, okay, because of the purchasing power of money. You cannot take money and just leave it under your pillow, right? I mean, stamps, when I came to Canada in 1978, okay, and in those days there was no internet. You had to write home. And, Canadian stamps were like 17, if you were posting in Canada, it was like 17 cents. If you were posting overseas, it was like 69 cents. It was very expensive. What is it today? In Canada, it's like 50, 60 cents. Okay? So, purchasing power of money. So, if you cannot leave money. So, as a bare minimum, okay, you've got to make your money grow to match inflation. Okay? Match inflation. And if it's not, then your money is actually eroding. You're going to buy less and less. So that's the challenge. Okay? to at least make it grow by inflation without losing it, right? Okay. Also known as AKA return on investments. All right. So before, one way to understand what an investment is I like to make a distinction between savings, investments, and speculation. Okay? Here's my distinction of those three things. Savings is where the capital is guaranteed. Okay? The money, my money, is guaranteed. I will never lose it. Whoever is taking my money is saying to me contractually that they will pay me back my money, no matter what. And my money, my capital is guaranteed. The returns are guaranteed. Okay? So, typical of a savings instrument would be a savings account at the bank. All of us do banking, and where we do banking, we've got a checking account and we've got a savings account. One of my clients called me emailed me this past week and asked me about an instrument that they have, a savings instrument that they have. He said, how much money am I earning on it? So I know that it was a 6-month GIC and it was structured that way for reasons. We had to structure it that way. So it was a 6-month GIC, and we're just doing it because I want to just keep the money safe. He's a very elderly person. And so the executive was asking me, what is that earning? So I had to go and look it up, and guess what it was? 0.3%, 1/3 of 1%, 6-month GIC. Okay? Not much, right? But the principal is guaranteed. And at that age, we cannot risk that money. There's just no time for it. But here's what I'm saying, no matter how, the thing about savings is, the returns are not great, okay, but your capital is guaranteed, even the return is guaranteed. You don't have to worry about losing the money, okay, or not getting a return. Whatever you negotiated, in this case we negotiated 1/3 of 1%, 0.3%. But if you go to your local bank today and say, look, I just came with a windfall of $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, but can you give me savings? They're going to tell you something like 1.2%, because it's a big amount. If it was less than 100,000, they'll tell you it's less than 1%, and yet they'll charge you 19% on your credit card. Okay? You see how this game is played, right? So, in savings, the capital is guaranteed, the returns are guaranteed. Albeit, the returns are very, very low. Okay? But they're guaranteed. Now, then we come into investments. Again, this is the way I structure it. Okay? This is how I distinguish it. In my mind, investments should be where your capital is guaranteed. If I'm going to invest, right, I'm investing for a return, okay, based on a certain risk that I'm willing to take. Okay? But first things first, I want to invest to earn money on my money, but I don't want to lose my money. Okay? The first question that I ask is, can I lose my money? If I can lose my money, then this is not an investment. We'll come to the next one. This is speculation. Okay? So if I'm going to try to at least match inflation, I don't want to put it in a 6-month GIC because it's earning 1/3 of 1%, and inflation is running at 2 or 3%. I got to make at least 2 or 3% on my money, right? So I'm going to have to take some risk. Okay? It's going to be a calculated risk. I'm going to show you how to take the risk. But I don't want to lose my money because it defeats the whole purpose. Okay? So what most people are doing out there is what I think is speculation and gambling. Okay? But they don't even ask the question where, is my money guaranteed? Okay? And because they don't ask that question, then over time what they find is, not only did they not get the return on the money, the projection, it might go by 3%, 5%, 10%, 4%, whatever the projection was for the return, they didn't get that. Okay? Not only they didn't get that, okay, now they've lost their capital. Okay? Now this is happening even as we speak, on a daily basis. Right? Speak to any investment advisor, and they'll tell you, this is just the market. Market goes up, market goes down, but on the long run, it's it's on the. And that is true. Okay, that is true. All I'm saying to you, just be aware of it. Okay, we're going to do things as I said, in the first half, with our eyes wide open. Okay, we're going to ask the right questions, and once we know the answers to the questions, and if we're comfortable with it, then we do it. But we will never do this blindly again. Never again. We give our money, without asking the right questions. Okay? So this is a distinction that I make, that a savings is where the capital and the returns are guaranteed. An investment is where the capital is guaranteed, but the returns are not guaranteed, but it's based on the risk that you are willing to take. And you choose the risk level. And in gambling, on speculation, there's no return of capital nor of the returns. Okay? Capital and returns are not guaranteed. Is that clear? All right. So based on that, let's look at how we go about this. So we talked about what it is. So why do we need to invest? We need to invest because, like Pharaoh, right, from the years of abundance, there are going to come years of famine. Okay? The analogy that I use is sooner or later. Am I on? Am I on? Okay, very good. It's okay to do it, don't worry about it. Where was I? Sooner or later, we have our years of abundance. When we have our health, we have our vitality, our energy, okay? And we are at the peak of our earnings. I'd say between 25 to 65, okay? But there comes a time when, the writing is on the wall, okay? We've got less energy. Sometimes health goes, okay? And we need to hang up our shoes. So all of us have a source of income, okay? An active source of income, either employment or self-employment, right? So what we need to do is ensure that when the years of famine come, right, that we have reserves set aside, because there's still a finishing period that we have to do here, right? We don't know. Only God knows how long we're going to live, and we don't want to be running out of money. And the saddest thing is to come to that stage in life and have to worry about money. Okay, worry not so much about going on a world trip or something like that, but about basics: food, shelter, transportation, clothing. I mean, nothing saddens me more than to hear of seniors who whose toss up every month is whether to pay the rent or to eat this month. Okay, it's very sad when that happens, because if you're living on a subsistence level and you got to pay the rent first, and towards the end of the month they don't eat. Okay, it's not for no reason that they are the way they are. So the way they look. All right. So it's to replace or supplement active income at some point in life, either from employment or self-employment, because of age, because of health, because of retirement, or simply because of choice. Okay, you've decided that, look, you want to start doing the things that are really truly important to you before you run out of time, and you must be able to do this. So this is the why. We talked about the what, the why. So let's talk about I believe the next one up is the how, I think. The when. Okay. Order of priority. So what, why, and when. Order of priority. First insure, then save, then invest. Okay. The world has it backwards, I think. Okay. Why? Because no matter whether you are saving, whether you are investing, or whether you are speculating, okay, all of these three require an element of time. Okay. If I buy a 6-month GIC earning me 1/3 of 1%, they will only pay me that 1/3 of 1% at the end of 6 months. It's a 6-month GIC. I need 6 months, and I don't have a guarantee of time. You follow? So because you don't have a guarantee of time, okay, if you're not born into wealth, you have to go out there, earn and save and build your wealth, build your reserves. Okay? But in order to build your reserves, you need to be able to go out there and do this. What if you run out of time? Okay? So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you are insured for life and for health insurance. Because if you're not, okay, the rug has just been pulled from under you. You follow? I recently had to counsel a couple, and they were paying a lot of money in insurance, and it was just getting to them like it seems like a lot. Okay, our savings are not growing, but we're putting all this money into insurance, and this is the general understanding of insurance, and this is why I have these sessions. Okay, I'm going to give you a different perspective, different take. So I said to them, okay, fine. You've got $10,000 going towards insurance, and you're saying my savings are not going up by $10,000. So let's leave it in the savings, okay? But if we leave this in the savings, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, something happens. What if let's say 3 years from now, something happens? What have you got in there? $30,000, okay? These people live on about $90,000 a year, right? This is the check that they're taking out of their company, about $8,000 a month, right? What's that $30,000 going to do? You follow what I'm saying? It might give you comfort right now that I'm building, but if you run out of time, one of you runs out of time, and the couple, husband is doing the technical part, wife is just helping in the office, and they pull out about $8,000 out of the company every month. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So check. So the reason why I say insure first, okay, is because all investments require time, and you don't have a guarantee of time. Okay, you might not get there. You follow? What insurance does is, it's a reverse of investments. They say, we guarantee the investment. So, you're saying I'm buying a $100,000 policy or $1 million policy of life insurance. What you're saying to them is, for a monthly amount, you guarantee that amount in case this happens. Yeah, because I have no control over this. Similarly for disability, similarly for critical illness, long-term care. Yeah? Very important, insure. But again, don't go hog wild insuring. Okay, if you come, with a salesperson, he's going to sell you the moon if he can. Okay, don't let him do that either, within reason. Okay, 20% of income, optimally, not over, not under, enough to take care of the situation in case something happens. All right, first thing, insure. Second thing, before you go out and invest, is save. Okay, because as sure as the sun is going to rise, there's going to be emergencies. So what are you going to do? Okay. Cash in your investments. And I get these calls all the time. Before I developed the GPS process, it was selling insurance and investments. Okay, and so I get every so often I'll get this call. Please cash in my RSPs. I have a cash crunch. Right? So they jumped into investments without saving for. Okay, so remember when we talked about savings, we said in savings, the capital is guaranteed. Doesn't matter. Okay, this one here. Okay, in savings, we said that the capital is guaranteed. It's not a good idea to bring this up, wasn't it? All right. In savings, capital is guaranteed and the returns are guaranteed, but the returns are never high. Okay, but it doesn't matter because we use that for the emergency fund. I'm going to show you in a second how we can even take the tax element out of it by making it a TFSA account, right? Because when you have 6 months emergency funds sitting in a savings account, you're going to get a T5 at the end of the year. But if you make it a tax-free savings account, you won't get that, right? Okay, so with that, let me get back to where I was, and then we'll just go from there. Sorry? So here's where we were. So first you need to... sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
With those tax-free savings accounts, how do you know
What
what level you're putting in?
levels?
Levels on the GIC or what was it,
Money market fund? Okay.
In the TFSAs, there's different levels. Say the Royal Bank or a bank helps, so it'll go A, B, C, D.
Mm-hmm.
A being the lowest risk, B is your economy risk.
Mm-hmm.
how do you know what to put in?
Okay, what the Royal Bank did is, it's their way of doing it. Okay, what I suggest you do when it comes to your emergency fund, lay it whichever you want. Just make sure there's no risk involved. Okay. Now, when you have whether you want to put half of it in savings and one half in GICs, that's fine, or in a money market fund. First of all, stay away from the funds, even money market funds. Stay away from them because you are putting it in the stock market. Okay. And that once you put in the stock market, you are at the mercy of the stock market, even if it's a bond fund. Once you're in a fund, you are in the market. Okay? You don't want to be in funds. So you want guaranteed instruments. It could be just an open savings account, which is what I prefer. Liquid and accessible, because when the car breaks down, when the roof goes, when I have a dental, I need the money. I can't fool around with this, right? So liquid, we're not concerned about the returns. We realize that we're not getting a return on it, but that's not the intent or the purpose. This was meant to be liquid and accessible for emergencies. Okay, we are giving up an opportunity. I realize that, and many investment advisors, when they hear what I say, they think it's idle money. It's not earning. There is truth in that. Okay, but we are doing this differently, right? We don't want to be financially stressed out. We realize the opportunity costs in giving up returns by not putting it in something more, that can bring a better return. But that is there for a very specific purpose. So my recommendation is put it in a straight savings account. Even if it's earning nothing, we just want the money to be there, okay? Because when the time comes, we need to have the money. If you have anything like that, skip the funds, money market funds. Do the GIs, layer them in GICs if you want to, but understand also that when you tie something up into a GIC for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, there's penalties for taking it out. And that was not our intent. Okay? We want this to be available liquid. Okay? In a drop of a pin, you tell me, I come up with $5,000. If I can justify it, I need to pull it out, okay, if it's a need.
But if you put it just in the regular saving account, don't you get a T5 or whatever for interest?
Not if you make it a TFSA. Since 2009, I'll talk about TFSA immediately. When you do the emergency fund, when you open the emergency fund account, okay, make sure that it's a TFSA. Tell the institution, please make this a TFSA account, tax-free savings account. All that happens is they send off a form to you, just check off that it's TFSA. And as a result of that, you don't have to pay tax on the earnings. You don't get a T5, and when you pull the money out, it's tax-free. It's not just tax-deferred, okay? When you take the money out, let's say you put in $1,000, you put in $20,000 and it grew to $30,000, and 10 years down the road you had a medical emergency and you needed to pull the $30,000 out, you're not going to have to pay tax on the $10,000 of earnings. Okay, it's tax-free. Okay, not like an RRSP or RESPs where you have to pay tax on the earnings. Here, the earnings are tax-free, and along the way you don't get a T5. Yeah, I had. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, where are we here? Okay, so coming back to this, it's always very tricky to fool around with computers. Oh, come on. Hey? Escape. Are you an IT guy? So what's happening here, Boston? Is my computer frozen? Hey? I can't get to the cursor. Hey? I have a what issue? What?
Escape button should.
I tried escape, yeah. It's not working. I think it's like frozen. Okay, nonetheless, I'll speak to this. It's a good idea to turn it off. I'm just going to have to shut it down, and hopefully it comes back up. But in the meantime, I'll speak to this. Okay, so what we were saying is you have to, the order of priority, we talked about what, why, and now the when. The when is make sure you insure first, okay? Make sure you save first. Then you invest. People are too eager always because, you know what, it's very boring to talk about death or to talk about, health where things would go wrong, right? But that's the reality, and they could. Okay, it's more exciting to talk about. And this is what I'm speaking from my experience here. That along the way, as we were trying to find ways to do business, when I first started, I started in insurance, but I found it very, very difficult. Nobody wants to talk to you about insurance. You call them, and it's like pulling teeth, trying to get in front of them to talk to them about insurance. What was easier was to talk to them about retirement. How you're going to go and slow motion fly, walk on the beach in Hawaii and all of that, right? Paint those kinds of pictures. They want to, it's more adrenaline there, right? But the reality is you've got to insure first, okay? This is why as part of this rethinking, okay, the insurance comes first, okay? Even if it's not, as exciting. We need to do that. And as difficult as it is, we need to save, okay? But do that, because once you've done, but then we're going to invest in style. Okay, we're going to invest in style because we're not worried about having to mess up our investments because emergencies come up, or because other issues have come, health, or other issues have come up, disruptions of income have happened because of premature death or because of illnesses or accidents. All right, you don't have to worry about this. It's there, and when we set this up with the timelines that we have set them up, we can let them run. Okay, we've got other resources before we need to come to this. Whereas the average person out there, when things happen, this is what they do. Okay, and it's terrible to be yanking things out because, and this is where being in the market is crazy because when you are in the market, you got to let it stay there. Okay, this is where people lose the money going in and out at the wrong time. Are we back? Okay, so we talked about what, why, when, and how. Okay, in the when, and I wish I had this, but I'll just draw it out here. Part of the when, if you want to understand, I had a diagram up there, and when it comes back, I'll put it up. My whole life is flashing behind you here, in front of you here. Office reminders. Let's see if it comes up. Okay. If it comes up, it's great. But as part of the when in the GPS process, when we take 20% of income, right, and we are cycling and recycling it through the 10 steps to financial freedom, this is part of the when, okay? You insure, you save, and then you invest. Because this is where the investments come in. Okay? Don't be too eager to get to this part, all right, before doing this part. Okay? You got to crawl, walk before you run, before you fly off a cliff. Okay? So here, insure. Take at least 5% of your income, and these are just guidelines, okay? Depending on when you're coming in. If you're coming in earlier, it might be 5. If you're coming in later, it might be more than 5 because of age. About 15% for debt elimination, okay? And all of us have some kind of debt. Once you've done the debt elimination, then you take that 15%. Sorry, I'm missing one circle here. This should be savings. Okay? And you keep saving until you've got a 6-month emergency fund. Did they come up? No. That's good. All right. You'll see this clear with versus my screen. All right, 20% of income, 5% goes towards insurance, right? And by insurance, do that until you're optimally insured for life and for health insurance, disability, critical illness, long-term care, dental and medical expenses, because these eat up your money, okay? Every time you go to the dentist and, he gives you a bill, there you go, your cash is eaten up. Take 15%, eliminate debt until you've got zero debt, okay? It's got to be intentional, okay? Become debt-free. Then 15% into a savings account, until you have a 6-month emergency fund, and make that a TFSA account, right? Then you recycle, once that is done, into investments. And the place that you start, where you build your war chest, is in an account that has got these 6 characteristics, okay? Not to be underestimated. I'll explain why. First one is that it's got to be an account that is insured. I'm going to put $10,000 into a savings account. There's no financial institution who's going to pay you more than $10,000. But we want it to be them to pay us 10 times that. That's called insurance. Okay? It's got to be insured. That's what I mean by insurance. It's got to give you a guaranteed return of at least 4%. Okay? Because in the contracts that we give out, that's what it's contractually guaranteed, 4%. It's got to be tax-free. It's not a tax-free. Don't confuse this with the tax-free savings account. This account here, where we build our war chest, it's got to be tax-free. Okay, this is what we offer. It's no T5, right? Then it's got to be an account where when we do want to take money out, we can take a loan against it, and we don't have to pay back the loan. Okay, we don't want any cash flow problems here. I want to take money out on a loan basis, but I don't want to pay it back. Don't have to pay it because otherwise my cash flow is affected. I want it to be creditor proof. Now, in the past, we used to use creditor proof mainly for business people, because when you run a business, there's a tendency of getting sued, okay, by your clients and whatnot. I was talking to someone last night, and because of the scratch in the retina, because this guy had cataract, he said somebody suggested that they sue the doctor was afraid that they'll sue the doctor. And in the U.S., it is like that. I mean, malpractice suits, like crazy there. And I understand doctors pay insurance premiums of at least $100,000 for malpractice insurance. Okay. How it applies to the average person is this. Let me give you an example why you don't want to belittle this. Okay. All of us drive vehicles, and we have to buy liability insurance, at least $1 million, right, or 500,000. Okay. Now, if you have an accident and you maim and injure a young professional, right, and that young professional, as a result of an accident that you were at fault and you maim them, his high-priced lawyer comes around and says, you know what, my client could have made $25 million, but because you maimed him, he's lost this income potential. So he sues you for $25 million. Now, your liability insurance will pay, but to the extent of their limit, right? So guess where they're going to come for the other $24 million? They'll come after you. Okay, you were the insured. Okay? So if you have money, they'll come after everything you have. Okay? So this business of being creditor proof, right, it is important. Because in the account that I'm talking about, okay, it is creditor proof, right? They can't touch it. Okay? So it's an important feature. The last one is probate free. When you die, everything that you own, it's a tax that they want to take. They hit you with a tax. Okay, when they have to probate your will. With this account, it doesn't go into probate. It goes directly out of your estate. When you have all of these, what I've just described to you there is a permanent life insurance policy. Who cares what the label is? I'm interested in the results. Okay, I had an account. This is tax time right now. And I had an accountant email me this past week looking for a T5 for one of my clients. Okay, several years ago, this client had a lot of money in GICs, right? And I suggested to them that you're paying a lot of tax on that, all these GICs that you have. Why don't you take that and move it into a life insurance policy? There was, a bit of hesitation. Finally, we ran it by the accountant, and the accountant could not pick a hole in what I'm saying. They are paying a lot of taxes, and here's a way to not pay tax. And so we moved all the money in, and this is about 6-7 years ago, right? This week, I got an email from that accountant asking me, where's the T5 for the policy? So guess what? A 2-line reply I sent to him. There is no T5. All the money is sheltered. Okay. He's looking for a T5 because he's been doing their tax returns for years and years and years. So out of habit, he was looking for T5s for the GICs. You follow? But yet, there are people out there who rather pay, and this individual was paying a minimum $15,000 in taxes on the GICs, okay, which we are saving now, right? Because it's all sheltered. So these things exist, and this is where we build our war chest, all right? Okay, so the next thing was, no, it cannot be there. Not there yet. Okay, let me see if I can do this. I always do this with trepidation. I might not be able to come back. Okay, we did that. Okay, so as to where to invest, the next, we talked about what, why, how, when. So let's talk about where to invest. Before you, like I said, before you jump into the water, okay, and swim out, in waters that are out of your depth, make sure you know how to swim, okay? And there are 2 basic concepts that you need to have before you decide where to invest. Okay? The first one is rule number 1. Now, in anything you do, right? Now there's got to be the first rule of anything that you do, any game that you play, right? There's got to be rules, right? And if you don't know the first rule of something, why are you even playing that game, right? So, and where does this come from? It comes from somebody who's got a track record, someone by the name of Warren Buffett. I don't know if you know the person. He is a very likable person. He's very funny. Okay, he's really very funny. If you if you go Google his name, his wit, right? He's just coming up with funny things. I'll give you one. At the peak of the global financial crisis, right? He writes a letter that is read by about 3,000 people, 30,000 people in the world. No, double that who read it. 30,000 people show up at his annual meetings, his company's annual meetings from all over the world. They're flying in private jets and whatnot. Anyways, every year he writes this chairman's letter. You go to his website, berkshirehathaway.com, and you can read all of his letters going back to 1977. And it's very wordy. He's got no style. It's just all words. There's no graphics or anything. That's his website. And he is one of the richest men in the world. On the Forbes list of billionaires, right up to 2006, he was always number 1, number 2, or number 3, with Bill Gates and Michelle Slim of Mexico. Okay? Because they're all based on value, stock value, so they fluctuate. After 2006, he went down to about number 7 or 8 because he gave away a lot of his money. All right, why do I bring him up? Because he came up with this rule number 1 of investing, and here's a guy who's got a track record. Okay, he's done it. Of all the people who appear on the Forbes list of 400 billionaires, he's the only one who made his money from investing. The rest through businesses. Bill Gates, Microsoft, because of the stock value of their companies. But this is the one individual who made money through investing. So if I'm going to learn about investing, who do I want to learn from? From somebody who knows what he's doing, right? And he said, and I'll come back to his wit. So at the global financial crisis, right, in 2008, 2009, people turned to him. So what's your take on what's happening, right? You know what he said? He said, when the tide goes out, you get to see who's been swimming naked. All these people who took, look so good with all the debt that they took. He says, when the tide goes out, then you get to see who's really been swimming naked. That kind of thing. And then at that time also in California, Fortune magazine, one of the editors of Fortune magazine, mind you, this guy turned 75 in 2006 when he gave away his money. So 2009, 76, 79 years old, right? So again, his advice is, he's like a grandfatherly person. He's very likable, funny, and people like to be around him. So editor of Fortune magazine, there was a women's forum in California. Powerful women get together. And they were having their annual conference, and because the global financial crisis was just, everybody was confused, And so they called him. So what's your take on this? So he gets on stage, and 400 women. So this is a very serious matter. They called him there. This is a women's conference. They try to only get women, right? Women power. But they got him because of his unique perspective on things. So he comes on stage, and a very serious conversation going on. He says, okay, before you start, he says, I just want you to know, he says, I never had this so good. He says, I was never lucky with girls in high school, and I'm now at 79 sitting in a room with 400 women. At 79, But he said, okay, rule number 1 investing. Rule number 1 is, guess what it is? Somebody want to take a guess? What's rule number 1 of investing? What? Risk? No, it's related to risk. What I meant by was related to risk. Rule number 1 of Warren Buffett, his words, okay? Rule number 1 of investing, never lose money. You know how basic can you get? Never lose money. Okay? Rule number 1 of investing. Then guess what rule number 2 is? You can tell she's my wife. Right. So she's been well coached. Don't forget rule number 1. How much more basic can you get? And this is from a person who's done it. Okay? And here we are listening to people who don't know, what they're talking about, okay? And they'll tell you all kinds of things. I'm guilty of that too, okay? I drank the same liquid, Kool-Aid, and I passed on the same Kool-Aid. And I'm saying I don't want to do that anymore, right? I want to listen to people who've done what, they've done well, and I want to follow them, and hopefully I'll do as well as them, okay? So rule number 1, before you jump into the water, make sure you ask that question, can I lose my money? If they say, yes, you can lose your money, and however they sugarcoat it, not interested. Why? Because we can do better. Why should I lose my money? You follow? Rule number 1, never lose your money. Okay? So rule number 1, coming back to you, Herbert, was related to risk. Okay? So the question you need to ask, rule number 1 is, can I lose my money? Can I do it? The only, risk, we can do a whole course on risk. Okay? There's a whole program called risk management. As far as we are concerned, the only thing we want to know about risk is, can I risk The risk that I'm talking about is losing my money. Forget about everything else, just my money. Ask that question. Can I lose my money? If the answer is yes, not interested. Okay? You can do better, under my mattress. Right? The next concept that you want to understand is rule of 72. Now it goes like this. If you take the number 72 and you divide it by any ROI, return on investment, okay? The answer that you get is the time it'll take, years it'll take for the money to double. Okay, so let's do an example here. If I invest $1,000 at 10%, somebody says to me, the return on investment is 10%, and you've got $1,000. 72 divided by 10, ROI is 10%, 72 divided 7.2, that means it'll take 7.2 years for that $1,000 to double, okay? So, this is, you're very sophisticated because you talk to MBAs in finance and you ask them what rule of 72 is, they don't know, okay? And they know derivatives and all the complex things, right? But something as basic as this, I'll ask them what rule number 1 of investing is, they don't know. They'll tell you that they're not being taught there, okay? They'll teach you how to come up with complex financial innovations, and they can deal with all of that, but they don't know this. But you want to know this because it's your money, right? So rule of 72 says that you can quickly figure out how long it'll take money to double at that interest rate. So let's use another example. If someone comes along and says, my GIC, let's use the example that I use, the vehicle that I use where you're earning money at 4%, okay? 4% divided by 72 is 18, right? So it'll take 18 years for the money to double. Now you can have a reverse application with this too, okay? So let's use a reverse application where once if somebody's telling you if you invest money with us, it's going to double, investment guy comes along and he says, invest with me, and the money will double in 10 years or 20 years. When they tell you your money will double, they tell you how long it's going to take to double, you can figure out the interest rate using the rule of 72 in the reverse. So if you know the doubling period, you can calculate the ROI. So if somebody comes along and says, give me $1,000 and it'll double in 12 years, and you want to figure out what the interest rate is, divide 12 years by 72, you get 6. That means it'll take 6 years. Okay? It works the other way around. All right? It's 6%. So if the money is doubling in 12 years, that means it's the inherent interest rate is 6%. So it's a very simple tool. Okay, you're sitting there and you can figure out the doubling period or the interest rate, okay, of anything. And go back today when you look at your investments, right? Whatever investments you have, when you started, what it is now, look at the period, right? If it's double, or figure out what the interest rate is. Okay, how many doublings it's had. All right? Okay? Now with these 2 basic tools, okay, and I'm saying you don't have, no pie in the sky, you don't have to know complex finance, okay? If you just work with these 2 basic tools, okay, you already better than 50% of the people out there who are not working with these 2 basic tools. You're ahead of them, right? Because you've got 2 very simple tools to work with. All right? So where do you invest? Now that you've got some basic terminology, you've got 2 rules to guide you. The first one being that, I'm never going to, the first question I need to ask is, can I lose my money? If I can lose my money, I'm not interested. I'm not moving forward. Okay? And then you use the rule of 70. So where do you invest? So we come back to this. In the GPS process, okay, the hard work, like I said before, this investments here is step number 9. Remember step number 9? Invest, 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 and stay frugal, frugal, frugal until you have a portfolio of $10 million. Okay? Now, before you get here, this process here is, looks very simple, but as I said, depending on, the reason why I put that in red is because of your debt situation. It could take anywhere from 6 months to 10 years, and not provided you remain focused. Okay? And one of the ways you remain focused and I'll hold your feet to the fire is if you come to these workshops. Okay? Again, just to put a plug for the workshops, it's 2 hours every 90 days. That's 8 hours out of 8,760 hours a year. Okay? And I'm glad to see people who've gone on trips have come back. They didn't plan their trip around my workshop. they planned the trip around my workshop. I'm happy to see that I'm not away. When I designed this, I wanted this to be geographically strategic, and I had a vision of doing this in other parts of the country, and I wanted to make sure that everybody gets exposure to this, and at the same time, because I wanted to be geographically strategic, I had to do this in 90 days apart, and it falls in the month of July, which is a vacation month. But this is so important, okay, because you're getting the heads up so much earlier, right? And you need to build your vacations around that. Vacations are important, all right? But this is very important too. So if you stay focused, come here, and this is how we're going to, hold your feet to the fire and keep you focused on this. So this here is where we begin. Where do we invest? My recommendation is invest in this here, okay, in this account, which is really a permanent life insurance policy. I am part of the Halifax Estate Planning Council, a bunch of about 50, 60 financial advisors, accountants and lawyers who specialize in estates and wills and estate planning. Half of the room are lawyers. I'd say about 10 of them are financial advisors. No, sorry, less than that. 5 of us are financial advisors, and the rest are accountants. Okay. Yet when I bring this up, okay, they're not aware of it. And because I sit around the same table with them, and many of them tell me that in law school and in accounting school, truth is they don't teach you all of this. Okay, so we talk about insurance, it's more about litigation of insurance. Okay, when somebody you get into a kerfuffle as to whether they pay or not. But even accountants, I pick up, my accountant sends me every year through the CICA a booklet on personal tax planning. And what I'm talking about here, that I'm so, I take so much time to explain, it's explained in a 1/3 of a paragraph, okay? They just sort of go over, it says, by the way, life insurance can be used as a tax shelter, Don't give more attention to this. But there's a lot of money that can be saved and a lot can be done. So unless you can come up with a better vehicle, and this is what I tell them, okay? You show me where you can get all of this, then I'll put my money there. Okay, so the question that you need to ask when you're ready to invest, or if you have investments elsewhere, consider this, okay? 4% guaranteed after tax, okay, translates to 8% out there. Where can you get 8% contractually guaranteed? The market indices, S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, the TSX, 8% is about where it is, okay? Depending on the time frames that you're looking at, long periods of time, okay? This is what you're getting. And I'm not saying that we're going to do only this, okay? But I'm saying this is our war chest. This is where we build, right? Then we look at other things. And we're going to bring the risk factor into question here, okay? So where you invest, this is where you invest, first of all. Now, for most of you, because depending on your values in life, okay? If you think that this world is all there is, and your time on this planet is all the time that you're going to have, then yes, you need to live it up here and make the most of it. If, like most of us, you believe that there is more than this life, right? That you're not building for here, then you don't need to go beyond this. Okay? Why? Because if you just do this investment with the bulk of your investments, you don't have to worry about interest rates, okay? Bank of Canada changes the interest rate. You're not concerned because, you've got a 4% contractually guaranteed. You're not worried about where the stock market goes. It can go crazy, okay? You're not in the stock market. You follow? And 4% after tax, if you use my goal of $10 million, that's $400,000 after tax per year. That's like $33,000 after tax a month that you can yank out. And I don't know your lifestyle, but it doesn't. How much can you eat? You know what I'm saying, right? And so it's very doable. So what we're going to do in the next few sessions is, so this today, what I wanted to do was just sort of set it up. Okay, basic terminology, capital, the returns, the risk that we're talking about, the 2 rules. Rule number 1 of investing: never lose your money, and rule of 72. Okay, which we're going to use to estimate returns. And with that, we're going to, the next 4 sessions, we're going to talk about this in detail, and then the stock market, and then real estate, and then businesses. All right? Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Who guarantees that 4% return?
An insurance company, life insurance company.
Which insurance?
This one particular one is Empire Life. What I do is I have no allegiance to any company, and I survey all of them.
Empire Insurance guarantees 4%
Yes,
return.
contractually, in the policy.
The insurance has to depend on the insurer.
Are you familiar with Universal Life?
For everybody?
No, not for. Are you familiar with Universal Life policies?
Oh, yes.
Okay. In the accumulation fund, which is the savings portion, that's what they're guaranteeing, the 4%. That's where we shove our monies in, because once it's in the policy,
Yeah, but you must be insurable to guarantee.
yes. And if you're not insurable, the workaround is, if you are not insurable, when we estate plan for the next 2 generations. Okay. If you're not insurable, we look at the next generation who hopefully are insurable. We make them the insured, but you are the owner. You are the owner. They are the insured. We shove the money in there. You still have control, and they become the contingent owners. When you pass on, they automatically become the owners. If the next generation is not insurable, because also for health reasons, we go to the 3rd generation. Okay, make them the insured, because this is a cascading process. If you structure this right, most of your money will stay with you. And in the niche market that I am in, I'm trying to get people to even name ministries and churches as beneficiaries or a portion of it. Okay, so bequests will go into the church. But we don't want to leave a lot of money to kids. It's not good for them. Okay, leave enough, but not everything, right? And our ministries, our churches could use a lot of funds. Okay, does that answer your question, Kip?
Well, the guarantee is as good as the guarantor.
Yes. Even that, there's a backup. Just as in banks, you've got the FDIC, Federal Deposits Insurance Corporation. Insurance companies have their own compensation fund. It's called a SURIS. Okay? And what it is, it's an insurer. All the insurance companies, because when we sell insurance, all we're selling is an intangible product. It's trust, right? If that trust is violated, nobody's going to trust you again. The other people in the field know that. Okay, so if one of their members gets into, mainly the concern there is insolvency. Okay, if they get into financial trouble because of mismanagement, these other ones, through that compensation fund, Assuris, will buy them out. Okay, will bail them out. We don't look to the government, because they understand the nature of the business that they're in. Okay, if confidence is violated, they're going to have a hard time getting new sales, because people are not going to trust them anymore. So they bail them out. So Assuris, all the insurance companies put in money into a pool to bail out any troubled companies, financially distressed companies. The good news is, in Canada, we've had very few incidences of this. When I first started, I used to brag that in 200 years we never had any problems. And then in 1984, for the first time, Confederation Life had this problem. Okay, there was a gross mismanagement at the level, but it was quickly nipped in the bud because of the compensation fund. All right? Does that answer your question, Kirpa, about solvency?
So there is a guarantee for the insurance company
By a compensation fund called Assuris. It's the equivalent of FDIC for the banks. Okay, but this is for insurance companies. And investment houses have their own compensation fund too.
if the insurance company goes bankrupt.
Yes.
Then first of all, my question is how they earn money to get to guarantee 4%. Where do they invest?
Where do they invest? Well, when
Invest to guarantee
like
somebody 4%.
sure,
They must be getting
much more. Yes, of course they do.
guarantee.
Of course they do. But in getting more, they are taking the risk. You're not taking the risk. And they're able to do that. Institutional investors are a different animal altogether. Why? Because of the pools of money that they have. They are the ones who move the market. It's like a tsunami. Okay, when Empire Life sits with $2 billion in policy premiums. Okay, they have to. This is not idle. They have to make the money work, right? And when they move in and out, they cause waves. Okay, All of us are on the back end. This is why we don't want to fool around with this, and especially with the way information is moving, and because of greed out there, okay, we have to be extra careful, build all kinds of hedges and guarantees around it.
The same thing applies, like you are saying that if you take risk, you don't advocate taking risk, but they are taking risk.
But if they are taking the risk, I'm not taking the risk.
If we are not,
But if, again, as I said, if they took the risk and they went insolvent, I'm still protected because of the compensation fund. Okay, so I'm not going to lose anything. Okay, do you follow? Because
this is not CDICs, so it's not like guaranteed or
oh no, it's guaranteed even more. You see, CDICs, what Kirpa is referring to is when you open a savings account at the bank, they are governed by the Bank Act. Their compensation fund is called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and each account is guaranteed up to $100,000. Okay, but today $100,000, you know what I'm saying? If you have a retirement fund, it's scary, right? So I'm saying we're talking $10 million here, but maybe even not, right? But CDIC only 100,000. So even you have more than 100,000, you're only protected. You have to work around it. I had one client, he went to 4 different banks because of the limit. Whereas with insurance companies, the Assuris funds will guarantee you, depending on the kind of product, okay? If it's money, it's 100%. If it's life insurance, they up to 2, they put limits, okay? But it's the last time I looked at it, it's better than FDIC. We're not limited to 100,000. Okay, and Canada, we're very conservative. Okay, I mean the regulators here, they're much more conservative than, for instance, the U.S. Okay, the people have a hard time here. This is why a lot of American companies with head offices, they're pulled out. They didn't like our rules. They were too, straitjacket for them. And so they cleared out. The first company that I worked for, Metropolitan Life, when I started, it's one of the largest in the U.S. And they had a Canadian wing, and which is whom I started with. But somewhere in the 80s, they pulled out. A whole bunch of them pulled out because they didn't like our rules. It was too, comparatively to them. Because they wanted to do all kinds of crazy things, which is what's gotten them into trouble. Any other questions? Yes, Austin.
You've answered a few of my questions that I had already, but I just want to ask, can anybody do this? Like, irrespective of how much you make, is there a limit to the amount of money that you have to be able to do this?
This here?
Yes.
Yes. Limits? Are there any limits?
Yes.
Limit?
Or minimum. Say, for example, I worked I was self-employed and I made $10,000 per annum, for example. Will I be able to do this?
Yes, you will. Because it kills 2 birds with 1 stone, okay? When I do this for people, right, in step number 2, when we say minimally insure, what we do is we set up a term insurance policy. I'm meeting you for the first time, and I'm saying to you, look, there's a danger that you might get up tomorrow morning, you might not make it home this evening. And if you don't make it home this evening, these people, whoever depends on you, we need to replace your income. So if you make $10,000 a year and you've got kids who are young, I say, look, we need to make sure that at least $10,000 coming in, maintain what you have. And easily I say 10,000 by 20 years is 200,000. Let's buy a policy of $200,000. Chances are when I first meet you, you can't afford it because the cash flow is not there. You've got all these debts to pay and whatnot, right? So what we do is we buy a term insurance policy, typically a 20-year term insurance. All we do is buying us time, okay? So as soon as you finish step number 4, when you were doing step number 5, we come back to step number 2 and we convert that policy into this, okay? Now you've got the cash flow to do this. Now, for people who've got money, okay, and what I do with people past age 50 is, if they're fairly responsible and they've got all their ducks lined up and their house in order, typically what they would have is about 25 to 30% of their investment portfolio in fixed income, bonds, money market funds. Okay, the investment advisors. If you go and see an investment advisor like Edward Jones or Investors Group or one of these people, typical rule of thumb is, depending on your age, if you're in your 30s, okay, they always go with fixed income and equities. Okay, if you're in your 30s, 30% fixed income, 70% equities. If you're in your 70s, okay? 70% fixed income, 30% equities. And that's the ratio. So whenever I see people past 50, I tell them take that fixed income portion, which is you're paying taxes and subjecting yourself to risk, and let's shove it into this policy. Invariably what happens is, insurability is an issue, okay? They said, idea is very nice, but can I get the insurance, right? They can't. And so, like I said, we skip one generation or go to the third generation. But to answer your question directly, I think everybody should do this, okay? Everybody should do this because it kills two birds with one stone, okay? You're buying an insurance policy and you're protecting the people who depend on you immediately in case you run out of time. And at the same time, you protected your insurability. Because sooner or later, things will happen. You might get cancer, you might have a heart attack, you might get a stroke. When you get any of these things, you are uninsurable. Insurance companies don't want to touch you. Why should they? Okay, because you're a high risk to them. But when you've got a term policy, you've got a built-in right to convert. They can't say no. Okay? And so you're doing all of this thing. And when the money is there, okay, now that you've got this intent, we start shoving monies in. And the next few sessions are going to be very interesting because somebody like yourself who's fairly young, okay, you still got a ways to go. So you don't want to be just doing this, okay? Somebody like you would want to be doing this because you've got time on your side, okay? I love to meet people in their 20s because I almost guarantee you, that if you do what I tell you to do with a single-mindedness, right, in your 40s, you're there already, okay? And when all of your friends are, broke and, struggling, you're sitting very pretty, okay? And you will be able to do things. House is paid for, don't have substantial debt, substantial savings, not paying taxes on the savings, insured, all of that. Does that answer your question, Austin? Any other questions?
The insurance policy has two components. One is the insurance money.
The savings.
The other is investment.
Yes.
So
The,
guaranteed 4% return
it's on the investment.
is on the investment,
Yeah.
not on the insurance.
Yeah, let me speak to that. In an insurance policy, you've got two kinds of returns, okay? One is on the death benefit, and one is on the return, okay? I don't even talk about the death benefit because it's ridiculous. If you die in the first, and I've worked these numbers out, okay? Taking people in their 20s right up to their 70s, okay? If you die in the first year of buying a policy, at whatever age, okay? Because if you come in your 70s, the premiums are higher, right? If you die in the first year of buying a policy because of an accident, no one has a guarantee of time. The rate of return on the death benefit is 20,000 to 30,000%. Didn't I just tell you the GIC pays 1/3 of 1%? 20,000 to 30,000%. Okay. Now, if you run the numbers all the way to age 100, okay, where this guy lived till age 100 and then he or she dies, no matter what age they come in, it still gives you 4% internal rate of return average. Because it's tax-free, it's 4% after tax. This is the death benefit, okay? But what I'm talking about here is the investment portion. Contractually guaranteed. This is why I'm saying lawyers and accountants, when I say this to them, like, not possible. Because you don't look hard enough. That's why you're not finding it, okay? And again, when we, sometimes people say things, but, they can't deliver, right? We deliver. Like this example that I gave you, we did this 6-7 years ago. 7 years later, accountant is looking for a T5. There is no T5. It's in the policy, okay? And this particular individual, it's a $5 million policy that we took, okay? So you've got $5 million, you've got money in there. When he or she dies, that plus that is paid out, and go figure the internal rate of return. A lot of money. Versus paying money to taxes, debt interest, and then we wonder why, we're spinning wheels, okay? We are, it just can't seem to get ahead. Why? Because a good chunk of the money is going towards debt interest, going towards half of it. So this is why I'm saying in my, my description, build your financial house on a bedrock foundation consisting of insurance and emergency funds with tax-efficient walls, okay? Keep the money in. Debt-free roof, okay? If you do just these things, you're halfway there already. Then all we have to be concerned with is the investment, which I call the furniture and decorations. Then we go out and buy the furniture and decorations to fit that house that is now well protected. But this first part is very difficult to do, but needs to be done. And most people don't want to do it because, it's difficult. Any other questions? If there are no more questions, I want to thank you all for coming out. I know you had choices with your time and you chose to be here. I appreciate that, and I hope that you found value. Over the next 90 days, you're going to be rubbing shoulders with people. And if you found value here, do invite people. Okay, my theory is if each one of you brought one person, okay, we'll have 100% growth at each session. Okay, and bring them because people out there are struggling and nobody's giving this message. Okay, a different message that's being given out there. At least get them to come in here and evaluate. Okay, does this make sense? Right? So thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you in July.